Krishna Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Rama Hare Rama, Rama Rama Hare Hare, Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama Rama, Rama Rama Hare
सहनाववतु सहनौ भुनक्तु सह वीर्यङ्करवावहै तेजस्विनावधीतमस्तु मा विद्विषावहै। ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः। श्रीगीता ध्यानम्। ॐ पार्थाय प्रतिबोधितां भगवता नारायणेन स्वयं व्यासेन ग्रथितां पुराणमुनिना मध्ये महाभारतम् अद्वैतामृतवर्षिणीं भगवतीम् अष्टादशाध्यायिनीम् अम्ब त्वामनुसन्दधामि भगवद्गीते भवद्वेषिणी। नमोऽस्तु ते व्यासविशालबुद्धे पुल्लारविन्दाय तपत्रनेत्रा येन त्वया भारततैल्यपूर्णः प्रज्वालितो ज्ञानमयप्रदीपः प्रपन्नपारिजाताय स्तोत्रवैत्रेकपाणये ज्ञानमुद्राय कृष्णाय गीतामृतदुहे नमः। सर्वोपनिषदो गावो दोक्ता गोपालनन्दनः पार्थो वत्सः सुधीर्भोक्ता दुग्धं गीतामृतं महत् वसुदेवसुतं देवं कंसचाणूरमर्दनं देवकी परमानन्दं कृष्णं वन्दे जगद्गुरुं। भीष्मद्रोणतटा जयद्रथजला गान्धारनीलोत्पला शल्यग्राहवती कृपेण वहनी कर्णेन वेलाकुला अश्वत्थामविकर्णघोरमकरा दुर्योधनावर्तिनी सोतीर्णा खलु पाण्डवैरननदी कैवर्तककेशवः पाराशर्यवचः सरोजममलं गीतार्थगन्धोत्कटं नानाख्यानककेसरं हरिकथा सम्बोधनाबोधितम् लोके सज्जन षट्परैरहरहः पीडीयमानं मुदा भूयात् भारत पंकजं कलिमलप्रध्वंसिन श्रेयसे मूकं करोति वाचालं पङ्गुं लङ्घयति गिरिं यत्कृपातमहं वन्दे परमानन्दमाधवम् यं ब्रह्मा वरुणेन्द्ररुद्रमरुतः स्तुन्वन्ति दिव्यैस्तवैः वेदैः साङ्गपदक्रमोपनिषदैः गायन्ति यं सामगाः ध्यानावस्थिततद्गतेन मनसा पश्यन्ति यं योगिनो यस्यान्तं न विदुः सुरासुरगणा देवाय तस्मै नमः देवाय तस्मै नमः देवाय तस्मै नमः।
Hari Om. So we saw in the last chapter, chapter 17, we saw that the perfect elements of creation were ordained by the power of Om Tat Sat. And Om Tat Sat is the designation, the title of Bhagavan. And the perfect elements. So Bhagavan described the perfect elements and he used some examples. He said the Brahmanas, the Vedas, and the Yagyas. So he described them as the perfect elements and he said that these were ordained by the power, by uttering of Om Tat Sat. So see, we have seen earlier also, Brahmanas means, see, Brahmani Charati iti Brahmachari. The one who follows the path of Brahman is a Brahmachari. And Brahmani Viduhu iti Brahmana. The one who knows the Brahman is Brahmana. So anyone who knows Brahman is Brahmana, is a perfect aspect of the element of creation. And the Vedas, Vedas through which we live, Vedas through which, Vedas give us the way of living life. And the Yagyas. Yagyas means actions that are performed with an element of sacrifice, or actions that are dedicated, devoted actions. Those are the Yagyas. So these Bhagavan described as the perfect elements of creation, and these perfect elements were ordained, were created by the utterance of Om Tat Sat. So if we make it a habit of reciting Om or Tat or Sat before we start any of our work, then we can say that we will be able to perform any of our work with that aspect of excellence and that aspect of perfection in that work that we do. Samachara, as Bhagavan had said in chapter 3. Dedicating all of our activities to the Lord and receiving the results of whatever comes through the performance of that activity as the benediction of the Lord. When we do that, Ishvara Arpana Buddhi and Prasada Buddhi, when we perform actions with this kind of attitude, that attitude itself contributes to an excellence in pursuit. So with this grace of Bhagavan, we commence the last chapter of the song of Sri Krishna, Srimad Bhagavad Gita. So we have reached so far, absolutely, of course, with his grace, and with his grace and blessings, we will complete this journey of the study very soon. But when I say complete this journey, that's really not true, because Bhagavad Gita is actually a lifelong pursuit. It's not something that you start and you complete. It is applicable to ever-changing situations of our life. We all know that we live in a environment of flux, and things are changing all the time, and perspectives change, environments change, and we ourselves change. And in that ever-changing environment, it keeps us steadfast in the path of spiritual progress. People who choose to follow the path of spiritual progress. And not only that, while it keeps us steadfast in the path of spiritual progress, it also tells us, guides us how to perform duty-bound actions, and also other actions which may be there, which may come upon us. Hence, making Bhagavad Gita our swadhyaya, like Bhagavan had said, making it our swadhyaya, our daily practice, is something which is a must. So it's not something that we start and end. It should be with us lifelong. And now that we have done this, we must, in some way or the other, try and make it as a part of our lifelong habit. So in the Bhagavad Gita, sometimes one may feel that Sri Krishna is repeating what he has said earlier. However, if we get into the depth of what Sri Krishna's teachings are, and when we get into it, when we go through chapter after chapter, that automatically happens. So when we get into the depth of his teachings, we realize that life itself is a sequence of repetitions, things that are happening again and again. Not only a sequence of repetitions, life is a sequence of repetition in different situations, varying circumstances. And because of that, what appears as a repetition in teaching is actually a presentation of concepts that applies to multitude of hues. I mean, it's infinite actually, not even multitude, infinite of hues of our day-to-day lives, and infinite perspectives that are there. And this teaching applies to all these multitude, infinite hues various shades and colors and shapes and sizes of life, and then helps us navigate this life in alignment with Om Tat Sat, in alignment with the supreme power, that is Bhagwan. Now, in some sense, we have said this earlier also, that chapter 18 is a summary of Bhagavad Gita. I would say in some sense, and I'll explain why I say that. See, just like chapter 2 was like a kind of a preview of what was going to come. And chapter 15 was an emphasis on what are the directions that are to be followed. It's Shastra in itself, Bhagavan says, like the lighthouse aspects that one must follow in life. In chapter 18, Bhagavan Sri Krishna gives finishing touches, like I had said in my introduction, as an artist, and he makes concluding statements as a scientist. So typically artists, you will find, if you take a painter, actually any kind of artist, they stand back and look at their performance. Speaking of a painter, the painter stands back, looks at the art, looks for, aspects that are, to be tweaked a little bit, a shade here and there. This is how my Guruji, described this particular aspect. That's how I kind of picked up this artist aspect, right? And and then they give it those. So Sri Krishna gives finishing touches, and then not only that, science is nothing but an analysis, a logical analysis of what is being studied, and without a conclusion, science is no science. So you will find that whenever there is a scientific study or analysis, there is always a conclusion. So Bhagavan Sri Krishna in this chapter actually makes concluding statements. He says, he makes concluding statements. So that is how this is a beautiful combination. Actually, Bhagavad Gita itself is a Yoga Shastra, a beautiful presentation of art and of science. And while he does that in chapter 18, we also see that he explains lots of concepts, various concepts. So in that sense, while chapter 2, chapter 15 and chapter 18 also touch upon things that have been taught across the Bhagavad Gita, each of these chapters on their own are also offering us Sri Krishna's teachings, various aspects which are not covered in other chapters. So that is why I use the word, in some sense, it is a summary. There is a lot of independent learning that is at offer in each of these chapters, of course, in chapter 18 also. And it's the largest chapter of the Bhagavad Gita. Now, each chapter of Bhagavad Gita is titled as a particular yoga. We saw that, right? And the early part of chapter 18 deals with harmonization of these yogas. The principles that we have studied in each chapter, the harmonization of them. See, the principles that we have studied in each chapter are different perspectives based on different scenarios. And Bhagwan is essentially telling Arjuna how to stand up, get up and perform his duty, which is sacrosanct for him. The direction for Arjuna is to perform Karma Yoga. Now, to some people, it could appear new as we go through these various presentations of yoga. And that is because of the change in context in these presentations, as much as life is contextual. To some people, it could appear as a repetition. That could be because of lack of understanding of the particular concept, or maybe thorough understanding, whatever it may be. So it kind of varies and moves around in terms of the presentation. Essentially, truth itself can be presented in a variety of patterns. And each of these will have an appeal of its own. And that is how it is with Srimad Bhagavad Gita. Thus, while Bhagavad Gita in its entirety, like I said, is a Yoga Shastra, these three chapters, chapter 2, chapter 15 and chapter 18 are like they are also a synopsis of Bhagavad Gita. Now, in Srimad Bhagavad Gita, we have studied that Sri Krishna uses two terms. Those two are Sannyaasa and Tyaga. He uses them multiple times and on different occasions. And to Arjuna, these appear as contextual in the various usages of Sri Krishna. Now, I'll not go through the verses, but just a couple of verses that I looked up and wanted to highlight. Chapter 5, verse 13, chapter 9, verse 28, Bhagavan uses Sannyaasa. You can go back and look at it at your own. And there are other verses also. And then chapter 4, verse 20, chapter 12, verse 11, Bhagavan mentions Tyaga. Contextually, Sannyaasa can be translated as renunciation, and Tyaga can be translated as abandonment. However, both come from the root to give up something. And the concluding chapter, chapter 18, opens with a direct question from Arjuna as to what the essence of Sannyaasa and Tyaga are. So we'll see why he asked this question. First of all, Bhagavan has used Sannyaasa and Tyaga multiple times. And Arjuna wants to know what in essence are these? What is the tat? What is the truth that is of Sannyaasa and Tyaga? The other thing is, see, Arjuna has got one very explicit, clear instruction from Bhagavan. Okay, if at all, there are lots of instructions, but there is one overarching, explicit, clear instruction that Bhagavan gives him, and that is, Arjuna, get up, perform your duty, perform your karma yoga. There is no doubt in this. And obviously through Arjuna, for all of us who are living in samsara, perform karma yoga. That is the clear direction from Bhagavan. And Bhagavan also says in chapter 3, karma yoga, I am getting a little diverted, but anyway, I hope I remember. He says, sa yogi sa sannyasicha, right? So we must look up this verse, even I should. But he says, karma yoga, the one who is a karma yogi is a yogi and a sannyasi. That is what he says. And clear direction. That's what he has given. Now, Arjuna has also learned what the gunas, the various gunas, the sattvic, rajasic, tamasic guna, and the importance of modulating one's actions in accordance with one's nature. Understanding one's nature, understanding the kind of actions that we are doing, modulating our actions in accordance with our nature, and over a period of time, progressing from tamasic to rajasic to sattvic. This Arjuna has learned very well, especially after chapter 17, where Bhagavan Sri Krishna has described Shraddha in these threefold aspect also. Tamasika Shraddha, Rajasika Shraddha, and Sattvika Shraddha. Bhagavan says that a person is what one's person's faith is. And then he describes the threefold aspects of Shraddha. So now Arjuna is putting two and two together. So he's saying, one is the aspect of understanding my nature and living in accordance and trying to modulate it so that I grow spiritually. That is one aspect. The other aspect, Bhagavan is talked about Sannyaasa and Tyaga, giving up. He has told me to perform karma yoga. And karma yoga also, he says, is a yogi and a sannyasi. Now, then there must be something in terms of these threefold aspects in sannyas or Tyaga also. That is the question that comes up in Arjuna's mind. So his questions are twofold. Number one, what is the essence of Sannyaasa and Tyaga? And number two, what are the various aspects of Sannyaasa and Tyaga? So let us see and what Arjuna's questions are, and that will then lead to the concluding chapter of Srimad Bhagavad Gita. Om Shri.
Om Shri Paramatmane Namaha.
Om Shri Paramatmane Namaha.
Atha Ashtadashodhyayaha.
Atha Ashtadashodhyayaha.
Moksha Sannyasa Yogaha.
Moksha Sannyaasa Yogaha.
Arjuna Uvacha.
Arjuna Uvacha.
Sannyasasya Mahabaho.
Sannyaasasya Mahabaho.
Tattvamichhami Veditum.
Tattvamichhami Veditum.
Tyagasya cha Hrishikesha.
Tyagasya sacha Rishikesha.
Pritakkeshini Shudhana.
Pritakkeshini Sudana.
Arjuna Uvacha. Sannyasasya mahabaho tattvamichhami veditum Tyagasya cha hrishikesha Ritakeshini shudana.
Arjuna vacha. Arjuna says, Arjuna speaks. Ichhami, I wish. Veditum, to know. Tattvam, the essence, the truth. Sannyaasasya, of renunciation. Mahabaho, O mighty armed. Cha, and Tyagasya, of abandonment. Rishikesha, O Rishikesha. Prithak, their various aspects too. Prithak means their various aspects too. Keshini Sudana, O slayer of Keshi. So Arjuna says, I wish to know the essence or the truth of renunciation, O mighty armed, and of abandonment, O Rishikesha, and their various aspects too, O slayer of Keshi. Now, before we get into the verse and the following verses, let us first see the inherent beauty in Arjuna addressing Sri Krishna in this verse. I think this is the only verse where there are three ways in which, in one verse, that Arjuna addresses. We have seen multiple times he addresses twice or once, but here he uses Rishikesha, Mahabaho, Keshini Sudana. And there are beautiful implications here, to the question that he is asking. Mahabaho is one with mighty arms. Now, Arjuna, after coming so long in this journey from chapter 1 or towards the end of chapter 1, Arjuna initially, when he asks in chapter 1, when he asks Sri Krishna to take the chariot to the middle of the battlefield, that time he is in full control and command of himself. And not only is in control and command of himself, he actually commands Sri Krishna to take the chariot to the middle of the battlefield as his charioteer. But then he is in for a jolt. And that jolt, towards the end of the chapter, we see is completely downtrodden, depressed situation. That's where he is, right? And from there to now, he has come to a state of confidence through the learning of Srimad Bhagavad Gita. So he feels as if Sri Krishna, his friend, his cousin, his teacher, his guru, his God, Bhagavan has carried him from where he was to where he is now. That person with mighty arms, he's addressing Sri Krishna. You have carried me, O Lord. Rishikesha is one who delights. And Arjuna has come through this process where from a state of dejection and depression, now at the end of chapter 1, at the beginning of chapter 18 is reveling in delight. And what is this delight? Bhagavan himself, the one who has taught him, the one who has carried him with the Mahabaho, and the learnings that he has received from Bhagavan. So Rishikesha. Then he says Keshini Sudana. That's another one we have also seen earlier, we also did a satsang on names of Nama, Sri Krishna Nama. Keshava also comes from the same name. Keshini Sudana or Keshava is the slayer of the demon Keshi or Keshini. Keshini was sent by Kamsa, this Rakshasa or demon was sent by Kamsa to kill young Sri Krishna when he was a boy. And this Keshini Rakshasa was in the form of a horse. And not only was this Rakshasa in the form of a horse, he galloped faster than the speed of light. It is said that he galloped at the speed of thought. And there is a meaning for that also, why he galloped at a speed of thought. And it is said that Krishna put his mighty arms, his Mahabaho, into the mouth of the horse and kind of torn open the stomach of this Asura, of this Rakshasa, not Asura. We have seen the difference between Asura and Rakshasa. Keshini, Rakshasa. So here also Mahabaho comes and Keshini Sudana because he slayed with his mighty arms. Then Rishikesha comes again. Rishikesha is one who has mastered sense organs. We have seen this earlier also. One who has mastered one's sense organs is Rishikesha. So in the midst of all the deeds that Sri Krishna is doing, through his life, not just in Mahabharata, through his life, the deeds of merrymaking as a young boy, gay abandon, friendship, valor, kingship later on, right? and so on and so forth, and in battle. All through these, Krishna always had a mastery over his senses. And hence, Rishikesha. See, the senses are like demons. They run, they say, no, the monkey thoughts or monkey mind. The Buddhists often use the term monkey mind, right? They are like demons or like monkeys going from one branch to the other, helter-skelter, from one branch of life to the other, running around all the time. Like this Keshini at the speed of thought. That is where the speed of thought comes in. So our mind is running, that the thoughts in our mind, they are much higher than the speed of light, right? And our senses are running at that speed. To tame a horse, what does one do? To tame a horse, one runs. First of all, you have to run along with the horse. The horse is running. You run along with the horse, you mount the horse, and then you subdue the horse. This is how you tame the horse. Similarly, to master the mind, you run with your senses, control the senses, and then you subdue the senses. And Rishikesha is one who has subdued senses and thoughts that are running even faster than the speed of light. So beautiful ways in which, in relevance, Arjuna is using Sri Krishna's name in this first verse of the last chapter. Now, there is also a beautiful implied meaning in the choice of the names of Sri Krishna. See, the process of evolution begins from a lower state, a base state, and then gradually one progresses along the spiritual path to a higher state of evolution or being. We even studied earlier and we put into context Darwin's theory of evolution, right? And it is said that the human being is the most evolved of all species. Now, within the human being, we have also learned that tamasic and then rajasic and then sattvic. This is how the progression of evolution happens. And finally, ultimate devotion, Ananya Bhakti to Bhagwan, is the most evolved state of the human being. Bhagwan describes these states as Sthita Pragya in chapter 2, Gunatita in chapter 14, and Bhakta in chapter 12. Right? Those are the highest and the most evolved states. Now, Sri Krishna also in his life, we have seen, has to perform base activities. Killing demons is a base activity. So it is his duty as an avatara. We also learned about avatara. So it is his duty as an avatara to perform these actions of vanquishing demons. And then we have also seen how he has controlled his senses and is an example of controlling of how he is Rishikesha. One who has mastered, not just controlled, one who has mastered senses and thoughts that run at the speed of thought. Similarly, human beings have various challenges. There is no one who has no problems. Every life has its own share of miseries, its own share of demons that one has to vanquish, that one has to overcome. And then Bhagwan has described the highest state. So this journey where we undertake a journey where we learn to vanquish the demons within us, and the demons maybe in our environment also, right? And grow to a level where we get to the state of a Sthita Pragya, Gunatita, or a Bhakta. That journey which takes us from maybe a situation like Arjuna, depressed and demoralized, or maybe unsure of where we are, confused state, to a state of inner control and external capacity. That journey, that Sri Krishna uses, that Arjuna uses the names of Sri Krishna, is also depicting this kind of a journey that human beings undertake. Another aspect of evolution of human beings is on the path of giving up. So when a person starts traversing the path of spirituality, the first step in transformation is transforming karma into karma yoga. See, karma everyone does. In fact, it is impossible not to do karma. Bhagavan has taught us that also. By our nature, we are impelled into action. Converting that action into karma yoga is done with a change in attitude. that of giving up. So that is the first step of giving up. So transforming karma into karma yoga involves giving up. Of what? Of selfish activities. Activities that are prompted by desire. And receiving the results as the benediction from the fruits of action, as the benevolence, as the blessings of Bhagavan. And this provides stability to the person, whatever may be the environment. So for example, Bhagavan had said in chapter 2, Sukha Dukkha Samekritva Labha Labho Jaya Jaya. Tatho Yuddhaya Yujyasva Naivam Papam Avapsesi. So Sukha Dukkha, Labha Alabha, Jaya Jaya. So in all these situations, the person has Samekritva, is balanced, equipoised. And with this balance and equipoise, Tatho Yuddhaya Yujyasva, go out and fight your battles. With this equipoise. So this is the first step of evolution along the path of giving up, Karma Yoga. The next step of evolution is when one has fulfilled all samsaric duties. One does not have to necessarily stand up and go out and fight. All samsaric duties, all the worldly duties have been taken care of. And not only that, one has the innate desire to dedicate one's life to spiritual pursuit. So this combination of finishing duties and the wish to dedicate one's life to spiritual pursuit. These two are the next stage when one practices giving up. And in this state, the only desire that the person has is the desire for spiritual knowledge. There is no other desire. The desire to gain spiritual knowledge. This intense pursuit, we saw that, right? The intense pursuit where you give up the lower to attain the higher. You give up your sleep to go out and exercise, right? You sacrifice your sleep to go out and exercise in the cold. Why? Because you have a higher goal that you want to achieve of fitness. So giving up the lower to attain the higher, that is called Vividisha Sannyaasa. So this is the second state of spiritual evolution. And then the third state of spiritual evolution is for one who has attained the knowledge of the supreme reality, one who is a jnani. And this person gives up the identification with the ego, identification with the sense of I. And the life of this person is entirely devoted to Bhagavan, single-pointed devotion, Ananya Bhakti. And the only desire this person has is supreme liberation. This is Vidvat Sannyaasa. So Karma Yoga, Vividisha Sannyaasa, Karma Yoga where you give up selfish desires, Vividisha Sannyaasa where you give up the lower to attain the higher, and Vidvat Sannyaasa where you give up the identification with the ego. And now Arjuna says, Ichchami Veditum Tattvam. I wish to know the truth, the essence of what? Sannyasasya Tyagasya, of renunciation, of abandonment. And he also says, Ichchami Veditum Prithak. This Prithak should be read together with Ichchami Veditum. I wish to know what? The various aspects of these two, Sannyasa and Tyaga. So when Arjuna says Prithak, it implies the threefold nature of Sannyasa and that of Tyaga. We can assume that way actually. Okay. Prithak means various. Various could be infinite. Various could be threefold. The giving up of lower impulses, which are tamasic, and the passionate impulses, which are rajasic, in day-to-day life, is Tyaga, is abandonment. And this giving up of tamas and rajas, the lower impulses, tendencies, and the passionate tendencies, this giving up leads to a higher impulse. That is also an impulse, by the way, which is sattvic in samsaric life, and then sattvic in spiritual life. So giving up tamas and rajas in samsaric life, taking up sattvic in samsaric life, and then taking up sattvic in spiritual life. And ultimately leading to identification with the supreme and giving up the identification with the self, with the ego, which is renunciation or sannyasa. So in Tyaga, leading to sannyasa. Now let us see, this is the question of Arjuna. And beautifully he addresses Sri Krishna. So now we will come to Bhagavan's response.
Shri Bhagavanuvacha
Shri Bhagavanuvacha
Kamyanam Karmanam Nyasam
Kamyanam Karmanam Nyasam
Sannyasam Kavayo Viduhu
Sannyaasam Kavayo Viduhu
Sarva Karma Phalatyagam
Sarva Karma Phalatyagam
Prahustyagam Vichakshanaha.
Rahutyagam Vichakshanaha.
Shri Bhagavanuvacha Kamyanam Karmanam Nyasam Sannyasam Kavayo Viduhu Sarva Karma Phalatyagam Prahustyagam Vichakshanaha.
Shri Bhagavanuvacha, the blessed Lord said, Kavayoho, Kavayoho, the sages, Viduhu, no. Sannyaasam, Sannyaasa. Nyasam is renunciation. The sages know that Sannyaasam is renunciation. Karmanam, of actions. Kamyanam, with desire. Actions with desire. Vichakshanaha, the wise. Prahuhu, declare. Sarva karma phalatyagam, abandonment, tyaga, abandonment of sarva karma phala, fruits of all actions. Tyagam, as tyaga. So the blessed Lord said, the sages know that sannyasa is renunciation of actions with desire, and the wise declare abandonment of fruits of actions as tyaga. So Arjuna asked essence, the truth of sannyasa and tyaga. This verse declares the truth or the essence of sannyasa and tyaga. The essence of sannyasa is renunciation, which is giving up of actions with desire. The essence of tyaga is abandonment, which is abandoning fruits of all actions. So Bhagavan gives in this one verse the essence of sannyasa and tyaga. Now, what does this mean? See, we have seen karma. Okay, we have read karma exhaustively earlier. I'll just spend a couple of minutes explaining. See, life has inactivity and activity. We have seen that. Inactivity is two forms. Tamasic bhava, which is laziness, dullness. And because of laziness and tamas, you are inactive. And tushnim bhava, which is silence, tranquility. There is inaction, but it is in silence and in highest state of meditation, tranquility. And activity also two types, karma and vikarma. Vikarma is actions that are which ought not to be done. We have studied this, well in detail. Actions that are to be avoided, which ought not to be done. And karma are actions that are to be done. Now, karma is of three types: nitya karma, naimittika karma, and kamya karma. Nitya karma are daily duties, which you do every day required for robust living, like brushing one's teeth, okay, sleeping, eating. Those are kind of, japa, daily worship that we do, swadhyaya. These are required for robust living. So that is nitya karma. Naimittika karma are karma that comes from our occasion, our role where we are. It arises from one's circumstances, what we are doing. If my job demands that I have to do, Arjuna's job is as a soldier to fight. So whatever as a father, what I have to do, whatever role, let me not get into all of that. So it defined by the person's circumstances. That is naimittika karma. Both the together are called niyatam karma. And niyatam karma are prescribed duties. They are obligatory duties. These are duties one must do. You must do certain things for a robust life. Otherwise, the life will get, very dull, right? And one must do certain things for duty, for the sake of duty. So these are obligatory. The third part of karma or actions to be done is kamya karma. These are desire prompted duties. The purpose of doing these is to fulfill a desire. These are performed by choice. They are not obligatory duties. This is we do because we have a selfish desire. Now, Bhagavan here in this verse is talking about what? Not any of the other karma or anything else. He's talking about kamya karma, that one thing. Only to kamya karma. That is what he's referring to. And he says that the sages, they know that giving up of these actions, kamya karma, that is sannyasa. All kinds of sannyasa, by the way. We saw 3 sannyasas: Vidvat sannyasa, Vividisha sannyasa, and Karma Yoga. All 3 are covered with this. All of these people who give up, they do not do actions or do not undertake actions which are prompted by desire. And that is sannyasam. See, and the next thing he says is, every action has a fruit or a result. In the second part of the verse, Bhagavan refers to the fruit or the result that comes from all kinds of actions. So in the first part, he's referring only to kamya karma. In the second part, he's referring to all actions that we just revised. This you must understand the difference between the two, okay? So first part is actions only that come from desire, sannyasam. The second part, giving up of the fruit that comes from all kinds of karma. Nitya karma, naimittika karma, kamya karma, all kinds of karma, right? And he says that abandoning the fruit of these actions, whatever is performed, sarva karma phala tyagam. That is what he says. Okay, that is tyaga. First he uses kamya karma, then he uses sarva karma phala tyaga. Sri Ramakrishna has a beautiful expression of sannyasa and tyaga at the level of a Vidvat sannyasi, Vividisha sannyasi, and Karma Yogi. This is beautiful, and I quote, "The domestic activities of a young pregnant woman are reduced as her pregnancy advances. After delivery, she has no work except for looking after the baby. As the servant of a rich person who does the work that is assigned to him or her, the devotees of Bhagavan discharge their duties, holding all work as his mandate, as Bhagavan's mandate. The Lord's name is repeated mentally while all activities are going on at the physical level." Unquote. So what does he say? He gives a beautiful example. Pregnant, two people, okay? The pregnant lady, as the pregnancy advances, the number of responsibilities go down. Vividisha sannyasa. As you are progressing on spiritual path, you give up the lower to attain the higher. Keep going up the step like we are climbing stairs. So keep discarding, keep giving up duties. After delivery, no work other than looking after the baby. Vidvat sannyasa. After realization, after knowledge, after jnana, only Bhagavan, nothing else. And then he gives the example of a servant of a rich person. Like the servant obeys the master, the one who is following God, Karma Yogi, the Karma Yogi, does all work as his mandate, repeating his name while doing the work. So beautiful quotation from Ramakrishna Paramahamsa. So action takes place in the present and produces result in the future, which is the fruit. So desireless action belongs to the present. And any thought of the fruit is anxiety about the future. Right? That is why Bhagavan Sri Krishna says that giving up involves renunciation of one and abandoning the other. And this is declared by the sages and the wise. So at the present, absolutely desireless action. While you are doing this action, if you are thinking about the fruit, it's nothing but anxiety, because fruit belongs to the future. So abandon the fruit and pursue renunciation. So having explained the essence of sannyasa and tyaga, Bhagavan, now we will see going forward in this chapter, he uses both the terms synonymously. Okay, so sannyasa means tyaga, tyaga means sannyasa. Why? Because they belong to that root of giving up. So we will see that he uses both these terms synonymously. And we will also see that he refers to Tyaga as a means to attain sannyasa. Giving up of the future helps one become more and more renunciate. And now, before answering the second part of Arjuna's question, which is regarding the several aspects or threefold aspects of giving up, Prithak, Bhagavan gives some context in the next 4 verses. We will go through them.
Tyajyam doshavadityeki
Tyajyam doshavadyeke
karma prahurmanishinaha
karma prahurmanishinaha
yajnadana tapak karma
yajnadana tapah karma
natyajyamiti chapare.
natyajyamiti chapare.
Tyajyam doshavadityeki karma prahurmanishinaha yajnadana tapak karma natyajyamiti chapare.
Okay, I'm going to give up something right now. In the giving up the lower in interest of the higher. It's already 8:20 here. Whatever, 5:40 or whatever it is. So in the interest of time, I'm going to give up word by word explanation. Okay, we have four more verses to cover. So let's not do word by word. You can look at the notes. I will just go straight away to the verse meaning and all that, right? So Bhagavan says, some philosophers declare that karma should be abandoned as it is full of dosha. And others declare that yajna tapas karma should not be abandoned. So Bhagavan is saying some philosophers and other philosophers. Okay. So he's quoting other people, other learned people. So the previous verse was about sannyasa or renunciation and tyaga or abandonment. And also it was implied that tyaga leads to sannyasa. Tyaga is a means of attaining the goal. Remember last chapter we talked about means and goal when we learned about sat. So tyaga is the means of reaching the goal of sannyasa. That was implied in the previous verse. So Bhagavan is saying that a select school of philosophers declare that action should be abandoned as evil. Action, all karma. So these school of philosophers, they think that I think it's the Sankhyan school of philosophers, all karma, every single, whatever you do that has dosha. According to them, the outcome of any karma is either punya or papa. And they say punya is also dosha and papa is also dosha. And because of that, don't do any karma. And punya and papa leads to transmigration, repeated cycles of birth and death. And ultimate goal of a spiritual seeker is next birth should not be there. Because of which, renunciate all karma. They are doshavad. Another school of philosophers declare that abandoning all action will not lead to realization. And engaging in yajna, dana, tapa helps a person progress along the spiritual path. And hence, they must be performed. They must not be abandoned. Now, Bhagavan gives his decisive opinion. Let's see his decisive opinion.
Nishchayam shrunu me tatra.
Nishchayam shrinu me tatra.
Tyage bharata sattama.
Tyage bharata sattama.
Tyago hi purusha vyagra.
Tyago hi purusha vyagra.
Trividas samprakirtitaha.
Trividas samprakirtitaha.
Nishchayam shrunu me tatra. Tyage bharata sattama. Tyago hi purusha vyagra. Trividas samprakirtitaha.
Hear from me the decisive conclusion. So Bhagavan is giving his decisive conclusion about Tyaga, O best of Bharata. For Tyaga surely is declared to be of 3 kinds, O exceptional person. So Krishna is now using 2 names for Arjuna, O best Bharata Sattama, the best of Bharatas, the best among men. And he also uses Purusha Vyagraha, the tiger among men, the exceptional, to indicate exceptional human being. Because these are the people who are giving up. It needs exceptional capacity and capability to be able to give up. That's why Bhagavan uses these terms for Arjuna. See, Arjuna had used the word Prithak. Prithak means various or several. Now he is referring to the numerous aspects of Sannyaasa and Tyaga, of giving up. Now Bhagavan clearly says that this is threefold. Even if Arjuna was not sure about Prithak was how many fold, Bhagavan now clearly says Trividaha, threefold. And while Bhagavan says that he is going to give a decisive statement, see, learned philosophers have given their own flavor. So we must be aware of this also, by the way, and make our own choices. Learned philosophers have given their own flavor in various aspects based on their schools of philosophy. Two things are important in this study right now. See, followers of Sri Shankaracharya, they say that performing action, even if it is yagya, dana, tapas, is only for the karma yogi, not for the Vividisha sannyasi and the Vidvat sannyasi. Because they say that a jnani must abandon work completely. Some philosophers believe that. Okay. Followers of Sri Ramanuja say that there are three kinds of tyaga. Those that refer to the fruits, those that refer to the agency. Agency is the person who is doing the action, and those that refer to the actions themselves. Now, all these are traditional areas of controversy. So, it's best to avoid controversy in the state of and level of learning that we are in. Among various schools of thought, there is controversy. And my recommendation endeavor has always been to keep it simple. Like the golf swing analysis, right? They say for a good golfer, you just keep it simple. The more effort you put, the wrong shot it will be. So with due respect to our Guru Parampara, we just look at Bhagavan's verse, look at a simple translation and interpret it. Let us see what Bhagavan says. We'll recite verses 5 and 6 together.
Yajna dana tapah karma
Yajna dana tapah karma
natyajyam karyameva tat
natyajyam karyameva tat
yajno danam tapaschaiva
yajno danam tapaschaiva
pavanani manishinam
pavanani manishinam
etanyapi tu karmani
etanyapi tu karmani
sangam tyaktva phalani cha
sangam tyaktva phalani cha
kartavyani me partha
kartavyani me partha
nishchitam matamuttamam
nishchitam matamuttamam
yajnadana tapah karma natyajyam karyameva tat yajno danam tapaschaiva pavanani manishinam etanyapi tu karmani sangam tyaktva phalani cha kartavyani me partha nishchitam matamuttamam.
So Bhagavan says acts of yagya, dana, tapa should not be abandoned, and they should indeed be performed. Yagya, dana and tapa are purifiers of the wise. But, O Partha, even these actions should be performed abandoning attachments and fruits thereof. This is my decisive and highest belief. So I'm just going to go word by word because there is a little bit time. Yagya, dana, tapa, karma. Not tyajyam should be abandoned. Cha and eva tat, they should indeed be karyam performed. Yagyo, danam, tapa. Yagya, dana and tapa. Eva are pavanani, purifiers, manishinam, of the wise. But Partha, he addresses Partha. Api, even etan, these karmani actions, these actions, yajna dana tapa, even these actions, kartavyani, should be performed, tyaktva, abandoning, sangam, attachment, cha, and phalani, fruits thereof. And then he says, this is eti, this is me, my, nishchitam, decisive, uttamam, highest, matam, belief. I did the, there is some time, and these are important words and verses. So what is Bhagavan saying? You cannot renunciate all actions. You cannot renunciate yajna, dana, tapa. But he says, you must abandon the two aspects of the desire for fruit. That one must, attachment and the fruits. Getting attached and the fruits must be abandoned. So he says this decisively, that acts of sacrifice or devoted work or giving, that is dana, and tapaha, that is tapas is, so many elements, 18 elements, but essentially undertaken for self-discipline and improvement and spiritual growth. These actions must be performed. And Bhagavan says, even the wise, even the learned, the wise, Manishinam, even they are further purified by these actions. At whatever level of purity they are further purified. In the same breath, Bhagavan further states, and he uses, me nishchitam matam uttamam, my decisive highest belief, that even these actions, which is yajna, dana, and tapa, should be performed abandoning attachment and fruits thereof. See, like, I have this brand new granddaughter, and now it is an absolute delight to experience the superlative, wonderful creation of Bhagavan. That is what these young babies are, everything, even older people are, but it's amazing to watch young children, the change that happens on a day-to-day basis. Unbelievable. There is also this sense of attachment that comes from this aspect of my granddaughter. If it were any other small baby, that aspect of my granddaughter will not be there. But by the way, there's another thing which used to be there, which is missing right now. Earlier, when it was my son, then there was an anxiety. Oh, what is he going to study? What is he going to become? That anxiety is gone. It's not there. When I experience my I'm thinking my granddaughter, by the way, but there is zero anxiety about the future. Whereas in my children, my son, my daughter, that anxiety was there. So this is a beautiful experience, of going through this process and the Sannyaasa Tyaga that Bhagavan is talking about. Bhagavan says both should not be there. Both this attachment to my and that anxiety for fruit, both are to be abandoned. See, a silkworm is a beautiful example, that people often use. A silkworm makes a cocoon for its own evolution. The cocoon is a must for the silkworm to evolve. And then the silkworm gets entangled in its own cocoon. And this entanglement is also essential because it enables the change that comes about. And that change, in the seeming imprisonment, it evolves into this beautiful it transforms into this beautiful butterfly. And that has happened. Now, to be able to fly for this butterfly, it has to break open the cocoon that it itself built. So this act of breaking the cocoon is as important as the act of building that cocoon. Similarly, a human being performs various kamya karma. So Bhagavan is now talking about abandoning kamya karma. We have reached chapter 18, by the way. Chapter 13, he said you have to perform karma. There's no choice. By your nature, you will be impelled. So by our nature, we perform various kamya karma. We are impelled to perform various karma karma. We also perform karma through our goal, purushartha, for our own growth and development. It is necessary to perform those actions for our own growth and development. And through experience, at some stage in our process of growth and development, we start realizing the limitations of samsaric life. In fact, that's why most of us are here, because we realize, or all of us are here, we realize the limitations of samsaric life and we start seeking spiritual growth. A lot of people don't seek spiritual growth, by the way. They are very happy in their samsaric life. And, and then next step will be to seek liberation. The karma done by such a person who has reached this stage of, evolution, and that karma which is done without attachment and without hankering for fruit, that is the yajna, dana, tapa, which Bhagavan is referring to, which a person must do. This then leads to purity, and Bhagavan says, even if you are learned, you will become purer. And then ultimately the sense of peace and ultimate supreme liberation. Now I talked about the grandchild, right? My Noor. Now Nisha and Prahlad, I see them willingly abandon sleep and rest. They are pretty tired, they willingly abandon sleep and rest to serve baby Noor. By the way, I have seen this girl also is very, very easy. But still, you need to feed, the process has to be followed. So, but they willingly abandon that. Every loving parent does these kind of activities and similar other activities. These are the acts which are selfless acts, sacred acts. There are elements of yajna, dana, tapa in such actions. And these are done without any attachment and without hankering for any fruit. In this, when I see them daily, I can see there's zero, it's completely selfless, no attachment, no hankering for food. At the base samsaric level, life actually thrives through grabbing. Okay, the more you are able to grab, the more life thrives. At the divine spiritual level, fulfillment comes from giving up. While at the base samsaric level, joy comes from grabbing, at the divine spiritual level, it comes from giving up. Both terms of giving up, abandonment and renunciation, tyaga and sannyaasa. And this kind of a person gives. And this constant contribution of a person who practices sannyaasa and tyaga, or tyaga and sannyaasa rather, and contributes in the form of yajna, dana and tapa, brings about purity, not just within, but also in the environment. And that is why Bhagavan says this is his decisive, supreme belief, highest belief. Decisive belief and highest belief. Sri Ramakrishna Paramahamsa said, and I quote, those who want to make progress in spirituality and those who want to receive or realize Ishvara have to protect themselves first from base desires. Attainment of perfection is impossible without purity of the mind. Unquote. Now, Bhagavan Sri Krishna will explain the threefold aspects of giving up. That we shall see in our next satsang. Hari Om, Sri Krishna.
We'll repeat today's verses. Om Shri Paramatmane Namaha. Ata Ashtadashodhyayaha. Moksha Sannyasa Yogaha. Arjuna Uvacha. Sannyasasya Mahabaho. Tattvamichhami Veditum. Tyagasya cha Hrishikesha. Pritakeshimyajitaya. Bhagavan Kamyanam karmanam nyasam sannyasam kavayo viduhu sarva karma phalatyagam prahustyagam vichakshanaah tyajyam doshavadityeki karma prahurmanishinaha yajnadana tapakarma natyajyamiti chapade Nishchayam shrunu me tatra tyage bharata sattama tyago hi purusha vyagra trividasam prakirtitaha yajnadana tapakarma natyajyam karyam ivatat yajnodanam tapaschaiva pavanani manishina एतान्यपि तु कर्माणि सङ्गं त्यक्त्वा फलानि च कर्तव्यानीति मे पार्थ निश्चितं मतमुत्तमम्। ॐ असतो मा सद्गमय तमसो मा ज्योतिर्गमय मृत्योर्मा अमृतं गमय। ॐ पूर्णमदः पूर्णमिदं पूर्णात् पूर्णमुदच्यते पूर्णस्य पूर्णमादाय पूर्णमेवावशिष्यते। ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः। हरिः ॐ श्रीगुरुभ्यो नमः। हरिः ॐ।
Hari Om. Thank you. Any thoughts, questions, comments?
Yeah, I have a
Yeah.
question actually. You said from Tyaga we step on to Sannyaasa, right? No, from Tyaga you go on to Sannyaasa, and both involve dispassion, or what we call in Tamil Vairagyam. Is it, I mean, in Tyaga, it's sacrifice. In Sannyasa also, it's a level of sacrifice. But dispassion means losing all interest in everything. There is no sacrifice involved, isn't it? Am I right in that?
No, I would say it's not. No, okay, you're right in a sense, except for one term you used, losing all interest. Dispassion doesn't mean losing all interest.
I mean, interest is only, it's everything for God. So you don't have that interest in terms of relative interest, what we call interest.
Correct. So because at that stage, because there is full mumukshutva, the only desire is for attainment of ultimate liberation, ultimate, supreme realization. Because of that, there is seeming disinterest in other. So Bhagavan says, Yajna Dana Tapa must be performed. Now, this person who is a mumukshu, if there is a job to be done, if there is a duty to be performed, that person will perform. That person will not shrink away from that duty. The person will not shrink away from that Yajna Dana Tapa. So in that sense, it is not that, oh, I'm not interested. That's not the case.
Yeah,
whatever you do, whatever you're doing, whatever is required to be done is being done, but is being done without hankering for fruit, without attachment, with the ultimate Ananya Bhakti towards Bhagavan.
No, what I want to know is that the person doesn't feel it's a sacrifice. We can call it a sacrifice. A person who does it without looking for the fruit is not thinking that he is sacrificing something, isn't it? Am I right or wrong?
True. See, at the stage of karma yoga, so dispassion is more, I'm kind of venturing into something. I will also think about this in future. Dispassion is more valid. Vairagya is a trait to be developed by the karma yogi. It is an acquired inherent trait in the sannyasi.
Okay.
So more you go towards Vidvat sannyasi level, Vairagya is part of your character. Whereas in a karma yogi's case, it might not be part of your character. So your question is very important because karma yogi has to figure this out.
Yeah.
But at the level of, so you're kind of putting
mixing
the two
up
together.
Yeah.
So at the level of a karma yogi, yes, you practice dispassion.
That means you control your desires. You control your desires.
When you dedicate action to the Lord, when you receive the result as fruit, as his prasada, that time Vairagya automatically comes. It is so that is why Bhagavan beautifully, that's Bhagavad Gita is so beautiful because it tells you things to practice and the result of that practice. Vairagya is the result of practice. Vairagya is not practice.
Okay. Good.
Vairagya happens when you do. So if you go through our spiritual path, I put the spiritual path in terms of what action leads to what result. So there you will see that Vairagya is a result of.
It's a process. Automatic. You reach the goal.
Arpanam, when you dedicate as a karma yogi, when you dedicate action to Bhagavan, and when you receive the fruits of the action as his prasada, then vairagya happens. But a sannyasi, vairagya is there. Otherwise, it's not defined as a sannyasi. If vairagya is not there, the person is not a sannyasi. But still, the person performs duty.
Okay, thank you. In fact, this session, first 6, is really enlightening. Even though you hear it many times, the more you hear, the more explanation you hear, it is really enlightening. Thank you.
Exactly. Yeah, Bhagavad Gita, the more we read, the more
it is
we learn. And that's why it is so relevant. Sometimes some people may think, when you just read it, yeah, the same thing. You have read about Sannyaasa, you have read about Tyaga. Why is he repeating again? The terms may be repeated, but the context is unbelievable. It's infinite. The hues, and it's like they say the colors, the hues of color, right? It's infinite. So
thank you very much.
Thank you. Any other questions, thoughts, comments? Okay, if nothing else, then we'll continue with chapter 18 next week. We'll see you all next week. Thank you. Hari Om.